When we think about the federal government, it can feel like a giant machine based in Canberra. But what exactly is it responsible for? According to our constitution, it's in charge of some of the biggest things that shape our daily lives: defence, foreign affairs, immigration, trade, air travel, social services, and our post. From pensions to passports and war zones to Wi-Fi signals, the federal government plays a bigger role than most of us realise. Today, I'm joined by the one and only Graham Perrett, retired MP for Moreton, author, rugby, cricket and soccer tragic, and all-round Aussie guy. We'll chat about his time in politics, his love of storytelling, and what he is most proud of, and what life looks like now on the other side of public office. Let's dive in with the ever unpredictable, always entertaining Graham Perrett. Welcome.
Great to be here.
Thank you so much for being here. Let's start with a little bit of background information about you. Where did you grow up?
A little town about 550k west of here, St George, Western Queensland, on the banks of the Blonde River. One of 10 children, single mum. Obviously, did my primary school there and my high school there, and then came away to Teachers College in Brisbane.
What number are you in the 10?
Number seven. 3 below, 6 above.
Were you invisible?
Well, it was a busy household, put it that way, Belinda. Very busy household.
My mum was one of 13, so she's number
Oh, my
3.
God. Okay.
Completely invisible.
Yeah, okay. No. Well, yeah, it was always busy, plenty to do, plenty of sports to play and games to play and things like that. Mischief to be got up to.
Your mum's amazing.
She is. She's a saint.
Yeah.
A saint. She really was.
Oh, incredible. Yeah. Incredible.
My dad, less so, but my mum really did all the hard work.
She stood up.
Yeah. She did.
And so, country boy, grew up there, and then you moved to Brisbane to do your studies to be a teacher.
So I left home, I guess, when I just turned 17, and lived in Brisbane, studied at Kelvin Grove, and then went off teaching English, geography, history around the place for a while.
Modern or ancient, or a bit of both?
Just history, whatever. Yeah, high school.
High school history.
Yeah.
Oh, lovely. And then you became a solicitor, so you went and retrained?
I was... I left teaching, loving teaching, but I just wanted to have an exit strategy just in case I stopped loving it, and ended up switching after 11 years of teaching, and then became an article clerk, which was a bit of a readjustment, and did that for a while, which I enjoyed, working in wills and estates and commercial stuff, so that was good. Yes. And then a bit of industrial law. So.
That's a big difference. Well, good for you to be working in government with that background as well.
Law is... teaching was useful, but law is definitely an essential thing. Well, not essential, but it's very useful.
Completely useful.
Very useful to have an understanding of legal processes when you're a member of parliament, in terms of working on legislation and making it better and developing it even. So.
Yeah. And so was there a moment in time or an event that made you decide, do you know what, I'm going to run?
Well, there was. No. So I joined the Labor Party after my wife basically said she was sick of me whinging, said, why don't you do something, rather than just complain to her.
And what were you whinging about?
Some of John Howard's policies, and the Liberal and National Party in Queensland, some of their policies. There's been a change of government, and I was like, all right. I went and joined the local Labor Party, and then I found that very helpful to go and talk to people about policy, debate ideas, all that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And so that got me engaged in the political process. The thing that got me in to run was walking down the street one day. I ran into a friend, and the candidate in Moreton who'd run, I think, twice before, decided she wasn't going to run a third time. And they needed someone
there was a
at short
vacancy.
notice. There was sort of an opportunity, And I thought, yeah, why not?
Have
Why
a
not?
go. Yeah.
Yeah.
See, I've always been a swinger. I will vote for the person versus the party. And it's so interesting. Like in my youth, I guess again, I don't feel like I'm a political person. I am a person for the people. I'm a person for the community. And I don't think I ever really read what parties had to offer or what the person had to
Yeah.
offer. It was more the vibe that I got, which is
Of
probably
the
terrible.
candidate.
Of the
Well,
candidate.
it's a guide.
Yeah.
It's not a bad guide.
Yeah. But it's
You know,
interesting
because
that
there
the
are,
youth of today, like particularly my children, two of them are of voting age, they're really interested in what parties have to offer,
yeah.
and
Well, as they
it's
should.
so
Yeah.
good.
Well, if you don't make yourself aware of what's going on, you can't complain.
Yeah, particularly when, one of them wants to be in the housing market in the future and she's really looking at what's going to be in it for me in the next 2 to 3 years. It's excellent.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So
Yeah,
that's a
no,
bit
well,
of
it is. And why not a bit of self-interest when you vote?
yeah.
Yeah, look at the party that's doing
Yep.
the things for you. Now, if you are, that might be that you care about the environment and what your great grandchildren, what the world will look like for them. So look at those policies. It's not just what tax break do I get, or what school funding will my kids receive, that sort of thing.
It's forward thinking, future
Yeah,
thinking.
no, and
Yeah.
it's every politician should be retailing what works for Belinda. What works for this household.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's good. So what is next for you? I know you're retired from Parliament. What are you doing right now with yourself?
Right now, I've been doing some supply teaching. I start another job on the sort of getting back into the political world on the 1st of July. So
Ooh.
a little bit of relief teaching in between, and I did some training of. I went to Thailand to train some Myanmar MPs into the parliamentary committee process. That was pretty interesting. So,
In Myanmar.
yeah, no, I was right on the border.
Oh yeah.
It wasn't safe to go into Myanmar, but we had some Myanmar MPs down on the border.
And you were training them?
Yeah, about parliamentary processes. Yeah,
Fantastic.
it was quite the experience.
Well, you've been in that role for 16 years.
Yeah,
15 to 16.
18.
18.
Yeah. So I first ran in 2004, but I didn't get elected. But I got elected Kevin 07.
Kevin 07.
Yeah.
I remember Kevin 07. So, what is the one thing during your career in politics? What's the one thing you're most proud of that you achieved?
Well, look, there's a few big policy things that are more of a collective that aren't but the National Disability Insurance Scheme is something I'm very proud to be a part of the government that delivered that. Some funding for schools and hospitals. They're all big ticket items that I'm particularly proud of. But in terms of individual things for my community, there's two rail crossings. Grade separation at Kessels and Mains Road just outside the netball centre in McGregor.
Mm-hmm.
Very proud of that. And then there's another one being built in Salisbury, the rail crossing there. Cooper's Plains, the rail crossing there that will actually be save a lot of people a lot of time. So those rail crossings.
I know that rail crossing.
Yeah.
Is that the one that if you're coming from this side, you could sit there trying to make a left turn?
Forever.
Literally 20 minutes. Literally.
Yeah. And the other one, which is to be built, is a koala crossing under Tui Road. So three crossings that are slightly different, but all of them.
One's for animals, two for one's for cars, and the other one for cars as well.
Yeah, they're all cars and trains, and cars and cars, and cars and koalas.
Yeah.
There goes those. They'd be my three.
Well, I can't wait not that I go to Cooper's Plains much anymore. We're a foster family, and I had a little boy that I'd go and collect from there. Okay. But I was never on time. Technically, I was on time at that set of lights.
That crossing, it's a night. You know it. Locals, and it's been a nightmare for 50 odd years. Yeah. So to be able to get that sorted.
Congratulations.
Yeah, well, I'll wait till the ribbon's cut.
Yeah, good. That's great. If you could go back in time to the first day you walked in to Parliament, what would you whisper to yourself? What piece of advice
Yeah.
Or don't do this, or yes, do this. What have you got to say?
Maybe it's hard to say this, but to be a little bit more strategic when you open your mouth, because I was a bit probably passionate and honest, and that's not always something that will advance your career in politics. But the flip side of that is I was always passionate and honest, and they're things that I like in people, like I like. But yeah, so maybe just think carefully before you speak might be
We
a
could
good...
all do with a little bit of that. I have that.
Yeah. But you've got to be who you are as well.
Yeah.
You've got to...
And, I've done a deep dive into you. I've been through all your Instagram and I've looked at a lot of articles of you. Yeah. And the passion does shine through. And I think that that's a good thing.
So, yeah. So what? Do I want to be trying to pretend I'm someone else?
No.
And then you...
And then toe the line? You don't want to toe a line.
Then you end up living with, what's that saying? You've got to live with yourself.
Yeah.
And do I want to live with someone that So I don't have too many regrets, but just maybe that little bit of advice is just think carefully. So you would say to yourself...
Just
think carefully.
Yeah, just think, just take a couple of seconds and word it correctly.
Think carefully, but be true to yourself. Yes. So maybe I would have blabbed more. I don't know.
Sadly, we can't go back and say anything, but I think that's a good thing.
But I'm not one for regrets, put it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. And everything is on our path anyway.
Yeah.
Meant to be.
Yeah.
So have you got any particularly odd or hilarious requests from your constituents over the years that you can now safely laugh about?
Look, well, yeah,
even the craziest request.
Well, I used to get a lot of, someone would come, like, knock on the door without a interview planned, and just say, look, I need to, get my cousin here tomorrow on a plane from, Nairobi for my daughter's wedding. And I'm like,
I'm not a magician.
Dude, we can phone the embassy, but but it's like, oh, come on, why didn't we have this conversation? Did you just decide to get married yesterday? I mean, so there was some of those that were just like, as you said, I'm not a musician. I am a musician.
Are you a musician?
But I'm not a magician.
You're not a magician.
And I remember there was another guy that I used to see. I'd see him every year, this elderly French gentleman who needed proof that he was alive so that he could get his French pension. And so I had to sign this form every year. So that was something. And there was a few people like that.
I had a French guy doing the same thing with me when I worked in council.
Yeah, they just, every year, am I still alive?
Yeah, I'm existing.
Yeah, and so that was sort of always quite, I'd, trot out my schoolboy French and have a bit of a...
good on you. I can just say, oui, ooh la la.
So some of those strange requests. I remember we had a big debate about some gun safety issue, and ended up being surrounded by all these people that had a different idea about how they needed to have semi-automatic shotguns.
So they were pro guns?
Yeah. Well, I have no problem with guns. I grew up with guns all my life. But they needed this particular butt adjustment that let them have a semi-automatic shotgun. Mm. And the Labor Party was against that. Mm. They'd come to, they had this big group, they came to a public meeting. And I was just like, well, explain to me why, how bad a shot are you that you need to use, basically an automatic shotgun, and they were like, they couldn't explain, because I grew up shooting things, And so I was like, no, that's rubbish, And
did they take that?
Oh, they respected my position.
Yes.
They had me pegged as a inner city latte sipping, and I was able to say, no, that's bullshit.
I'm a country lad.
Come
at me with your gun questions.
I would have shot a lot more things than some of you people, and I was able to explain it to them, and they respected my position, because I came from a position of knowledge, rather than just a a theoretical understanding of guns.
And you do come across to me as like a down-to-earth kind of guy and
Well, I
reasonable in your conversations
they
with
weren't going to
people.
bully me into this, and that my logic, I'd reached my position by logic.
Yeah.
And but I respected their views, you know,
Yes.
like so.
And you've got to toe that line.
Well, they're my boss. Well, the people that lived in my electorate,
Yeah.
there were about 20 of them, I suppose. 10 of them didn't come from my electorate. I said, I'm not listening to you. I'll talk to the people that live in my electorate. They're my boss.
Yeah.
And, we had a good conversation.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. They are my boss.
Yeah.
They're
Well,
my people. They're my people.
If a politician has that frame of mind, they'll normally do okay.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I agree. And what is your biggest headache? What was your biggest headache?
Getting a visa for a wedding the day before. Look, they were mainly immigration issues. A few people would talk about aircraft noise because Archville Airport and Brisbane Airport and the PA hospital all had had helicopters and the like. So normally you'd just have a conversation with people and explain the facts. I mean, some politicians used to fly to Canberra to complain about aircraft noise. I always thought that was a little bit hypocritical.
Yeah, isn't it?
You know, we were an international city.
Yeah.
We're going to host the Olympics, for God's sake. You know, we need an airport that functions. You know,
absolutely.
If you want no aircraft, the middle of Brisbane is not the place to go. You know.
No.
Yeah.
And when you say the PA, that's a hospital in Brisbane. That's a public hospital, and that will require a helipad with a helicopter functioning.
Well, it's a tertiary hospital. If someone's flying in a hospital to the PA, they need to be in that hospital.
It's dire straits, yeah.
Yeah.
And did people understand that?
Oh, well, I remember one guy that lived nearby just said, well, why do they come in at 3 o'clock in the morning? You know, and I was like...
Because there was a motorcycle accident or there was a car accident.
Exactly.
Or...
It was sort of like the person in that helicopter did not want to be there.
No.
Because my house in Maruka is on the flight path, so I could say, look, it's not great when when a helicopter flies over it, returning to its base at Archville, but it's like, well, it's for a reason.
Yeah. And I wonder if some people that are complaining about things, maybe it's not necessarily that thing that they're worried about, it's something else in their life that they're grabbing onto that. And that is now their issue. That's what I often wonder when people would come into me with things that I would consider quite
trivial.
Often it was
something else. Yeah, there was something else going on in their life. Definitely, but I'd still...
You still have to deal with the issue that they're speaking about. So I was always respectful of that. But then I'd get off the phone and think, okay, so that isn't such a big deal that I don't think I'd make a phone call, but they did. So it means a lot to them. Or...
Well, the classic would be because Archville has general aviation, so people do training flights. So they do a circuit.
Yeah.
Where they touch down on the airport and go. Touch and goes, little touch and goes. They might have to do 20 of them or whatever. Now, if you've got a lot of shit going on in your life, a plane flying over every 8 minutes might actually be incredibly annoying. Whereas if things are good and happy and whatever...
You'd be like...
You might not even hear it. But I'd always say to people, look, you're 500 metres from Archville Airport. Did you buy that house?
Did you say that?
Well, I
wanted to say that so many times.
Well, I would always say to them, did you buy your house before 1926?
Gosh, I would have liked to have said that.
Because that's when the airport... Because I know, because my granddad used to be a grader driver on that airport, so... And, not many people bought...
Because that's cheeky. And how did they react to that question?
But they were like, but why are there planes? And I'm, did your lawyer tell you that there were, and there's not many times when there aren't planes flying around Archville, as in...
Absolutely.
Let's work out what we can do.
These are the things we did do, yes.
Yeah, let's do the things that are possible, and I'm not going to piss in your pocket about
but I would have loved to have said that.
Yeah,
did you buy after the... did you buy before or after the schools? Okay, so this is one that I'm so keen to ask you. It's about the Voice Referendum. Was that 2022?
No, 2023.
2023. With the Voice Referendum, I was so confused about what it was. I'm going to ask you the question right now. What was it? And then I'm going to tell you what I did. What? Tell me.
An advisory body. They advised the government, a group of Indigenous people who advised the government. That's all it was. It was called The Voice, and it actually, I think, confused people. It was an advisory body. And because our constitution that you started by referring to makes basically no mention of Indigenous people.
Yeah.
It's in terms of the head of power that there is in the constitution since 1967. Basically, it was just an advisory body. Yeah. That's all it was.
So
the Parliament still retained authority.
Yeah.
But it would have been informed by this group, this advisory body.
But this is just me thinking out loud. But aren't all Australians Australians, and aren't they all? Yep. I know that the Constitution early days did have wording that was removed about the Indigenous.
No, it's in 1967 Australia had a referendum.
Yep.
And amended the Constitution. 90% of the Australians voted to basically include First Nations people. Before that, they were not classed as Australians.
Right.
They were classed as aliens.
Yep.
The same as Chinese were, Indians were. Anyone that wasn't white was classed as an alien.
Yep.
So after 1967, so we remember the Constitution kicked off the 1st of January 1901. For 66 years, they weren't classed as Australians, which was problematic. You know, they'd go off and fight for their country, and then come back and not be allowed to drink in the RSL. Come back and have their children taken off them because they were black. Yeah, so
there is a history that we have that is,
horrific history.
Absolutely horrific.
The first, we know some of that history. Kids are learning about it in school now. I didn't learn about it in school. We just learned about explorers. They didn't say that there were people there before.
So you didn't learn Dreamtime?
No. The school books that I had would have had maybe mentioned Truganini, maybe mentioned Bennelong. That would have been it. That was it. Everything else was white explorers.
Yep.
And then we focused on the kings and queens of Europe.
We did have a lot of the white explorers, but we also did learn about Dreamtime and stories. And the connection that our First Nations people have with this country. I was born in Darwin, and I only lived there for a year or two, but then I do go back a lot, and as I said, we're foster families. We have a lot of children who are Indigenous.
Yeah.
I've got a great love for our First Nations people, but I always wondered why that referendum didn't get off the ground. And like I said, I didn't know what to do with my vote.
No referendum ever gets off the ground if the major political parties are oppose it.
So you need
both
bipartisan support.
Yeah. So in 1967, both political parties, both parties of government supported it.
Yeah.
For the Voice, and that was a term that came out of the Uluru statement from the heart.
Right.
So in Uluru, the First Nations leaders got together, came up with the three things that they wanted, and a body an advisory body was one of them. They called it the Voice.
Yeah.
They also called for a Makarrata and treaty, the two other parts of the statement from the heart. The advisory body, as soon as Peter Dutton became leader, because Malcolm Turnbull had supported it, as soon as Peter Dutton became leader and said that he wouldn't support it, that was it. I mean, Peter Dutton walked out of Parliament. My very first day in Parliament was the day Kevin Rudd gave the apology to the Stolen Generations.
Do you know I pulled my car over and I cried?
Well, Peter Dutton stood up and walked out with Bronwyn Bishop and Wilson Tuckey. I think maybe one other person, but certainly so he said, I don't want to be a part of that.
That was a huge day. That was a really big day. And I remember
it was in the
morning. It was early in the morning because I was driving to school with the kids. And I didn't want to pull up to school crying. So I pulled up just down the road while he was talking. And the girls are like, why are you crying? And I'm just like, turn it up. Just listen. Just listen. This is amazing.
Well, it would have, because of daylight saving,
it would have been.
Yeah. It was my best day in Parliament.
There you go.
Yeah.
There's your best day.
In 18 years, that really was my best day. Kevin Rudd, unbelievable. and it didn't cost the nation anything.
No.
And in fact, arguably, it did many things for us around the world because we're then able to secure a seat on the UN Security Council. Hello. So it was a great thing, a great step in the right direction. The Voice was traumatic for people. I mean, 2 out of 5 people said no, said yes, 3 out of 5 said no.
So what I did with my vote, because I was so confused, I went up on the day and I said to my 10-year-old, I'm giving my vote to you. Let's listen to both sides. So we listened to the yeses, we listened to the noes. I said, what would you like? And he voted yes. So, because I literally didn't know what to do.
Well, in this electorate, half voted yes, half voted no. So it was... but I think the 10-year-olds, by the time they're 30, I think the nation will have moved on, and we'll see that colonial experience, yes, we're all Australians, but First Nations people have had a different experience. The incarceration rates, the
removals, all of it.
the age gap for First Nations people, the health gap for First Nations, the closing the gap that we've tried to...
Do you think we are closing the gap?
Well, we are. Last time I checked, there was 3 or 4 of those areas that we're looking at. So Kevin Rudd did the apology, then we did closing the gap every year thereafter. So I've listened to those speeches for 17 years.
So what's closing the gap?
They're trying to close the gap for incarceration, for life expectancy, for education. In some of the sort of KPIs are in about 13 or 14 areas. We're only closing them into a couple. So there's good news. There's good things being done out there, but there's still a long way to go because there's, as you know, if you know First Nations people, there's some institutional disadvantage. There's some,
generational trauma,
inherited trauma almost. So that takes a while to turn around.
What do you think it will take? What do you think it will take for us to all come together and truly be peaceful? Because
First thing I'd do is have an advisory body made up of First Nations people so they can suggest what would work. So don't ask Graham Perrett.
So that could have been what the Voice was?
That was a part of the process, was empowerment and listening to Indigenous voices rather than coming to some white guy who and find out what his issues are. I did a book called The Long Story with a guy called Wayne Long in it, First Nations guy from St George. And I've known Wayne Long all my life. We played footy together, we went to school together, we knocked around together. And I thought I knew him reasonably well, but it's funny, sitting down and doing that book together just made me realise that I knew nothing.
What did you learn?
Well, in terms of some of that hereditary trauma, in terms of some of the things that I would never accept in my life that had just become a part of that long story. I realised, and that was a story talking about Indigenous Australians and Chinese Australians, because the Long is a Chinese connection. But it just showed me that we need the time to sit down and listen. And 97% of Australia doesn't have the time to sit down and listen to that 3%, that Indigenous story. Even the urban Indigenous story, it's not one we know very well.
Because I see online so many young people and older First Nations people, and they're very angry still now. And I, who was born here in Australia, my heritage, I did my DNA and it looked like it was Scottish. So at some point we came across, and I'm an Australian. I was born here. And I just feel like I have love in my heart for all people, including our amazing First Nations people who, I completely respect their connection to the land, and I completely respect their history. It's phenomenal. But I don't know why I feel like there's such a big gap still. No.
It's more complicated out in in communities, you know, but there's the economic base for some communities is problematic.
So you and I cannot solve it.
No. But we can be good allies to those and work with those who are. I mean, being a foster mum has done more for it than anything I've done in my life. I would imagine.
Oh, it's joyful. It's absolutely joyful.
But
they're gorgeous, all the kids.
But you know, my wife worked in that area for a while. There's not a queue a mile long of people wanting to take 14-year-old Indigenous kids that are in foster care. That's not a big group of people that want those 14-year-old kids, trouble kids.
Well, I've got an answer for that. Probably
a kid with fetal alcohol spectrum disorder or, you know, not many people are queuing up for that kid, sadly.
Well, do you know why? Well, in my humble opinion, because the income is so low. It's not an income. It's not even.
It's not an economic return.
It's absolutely not. So the people.
Special place in heaven, Belinda. See?
Oh. Yeah. Do you know what? I did it because it's necessary. Like there are so many children. Like literally, we get phone calls constantly. There are so many children that are needing a roof and a safe house.
Oh God, yeah.
But because the money you receive is so low, does not cover the cost. I think that's why people won't take that 14-year-old. And I've always said, and I'll just scream it from the rooftops if I can, if you look at the cost of residential care, upwards of 500,000. I've seen that in ABC. ABC reported 1 million. My calculations were 500,000 plus per child in residential care. That's because no one wants, like you said, these kids.
Yeah, especially some of the more troubled kids.
Right,
yeah.
But if you offered, let's just say, I mean, I'm not even going to put a dollar figure on it. Let's just say you offered a proper wage. Now, you're going to have a double income family who would love to be there to pick up their kids from school. Go, do you know what? One of us is going to stay home. We are going to take on that troubled 14-year-old child.
Yeah.
And I can pick up my 3 kids from school plus him or her. And now one of the parents is staying home. And guess what? They're out of resi. They're in a really good family because you can say no to the ones that are in it for that low money that you currently get.
Yeah.
So you'll be able to be in a position where yes.
I think you were seeing the best in people, Belinda, but sadly it's, as you know.
It doesn't feel like rocket science when you're looking at the cost of resi versus the cost of an income. Anyway, I wish I could rattle some cages on that one, but it just seems all hard basket.
Go and talk to your state MP.
Yes, I should do that. Now, you've stood up for some pretty amazing legislation that was passed. I know you lobbied to get marriage equality passed through the federal parliament. Congratulations.
Well, the people of Australia did that.
But I know really I read. Yeah. I did a deep dive. Remember, what did it mean to you when it was passed?
Yeah. It was that plebiscite was incredibly stressful for a lot of people, particularly in the GLBTIQ community. And remember, we had that head of power. The Constitution, Section 51, does say that marriage is a federal responsibility. The Commonwealth Parliament could have done that without doing the plebiscite. But the plebiscite, good result. Morton, I think, had a 65% yes vote. So it was good to get it done and then move on. And the world, I don't think the sky collapsed or...
Oh, no, it didn't.
Yeah, the world just moved on. People that love each other should be able to get married if they want to. If they don't want to marry each other, not our problem. Yeah. No,
well
that was good. Good to get it done, and people just moved on.
And I think a lot of countries followed suit after Australia, right?
Yeah. Well, since then you had the Irish, even Taiwan. Yeah, I think the US had the High Court, the Supreme Court decision.
We were
I think
trendsetters. Look at us go.
Yeah. No. Well, it's amazing, and then a few countries that you would, heavily Catholic countries that just said no, let's do it and move.
Yeah. I won't go into it too much, but that's one of the reasons I left the Catholic Church. Yeah, I was in a mass one day and they put it on the screen, vote no, and I was like, I'm out. Sorry, can't do it.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, again, what did I say before? I'm here for the people.
Yeah. Well, and I'm pretty sure Jesus Christ was very, very much love everyone.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You are not wrong.
I can't
You're not
I
wrong.
don't know what he said in the Bible about marriage, but he certainly said love everyone.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, and do good.
yeah, yeah,
Do good.
yeah.
Now, some fun questions. Tell me about the time you hurt your eye. I saw a photo of you online. You've got a big black eye, and I think it was stitches. Did I see some stitches?
Yeah, there were stitches.
What happened to you?
All right, so
When was this?
Oh, I can't remember when it was, but my wife and I, we had some sushi, and we were watching VEEP. And
now that is I've seen it. That's an American sitcom,
yeah,
and it's
with
got that
Julia Louis-Dreyfus.
That's her, and it's hilarious. So she's the VEEP means
she's
what
the
does
vice
VEEP mean?
president.
Vice president, yes.
And there's some scene with Jonah, one of the characters, and I started laughing, and I just started choking at the same time, and trying to cough up the sushi. So I went out, left the lounge room, went into the kitchen, and I coughed, and I was laughing and coughed so hard that I banged into the the kitchen island, like a granite island, and knocked myself out.
Actually, unconscious.
Knocked myself out. And then, Lee came in, and I had to go to the hospital, get stitched and everything. But then the next day, I was hosting a public forum.
Yeah.
Like the next day. And so I had to turn up with this big black eye and stitches and sort of explain, look, funny thing happened.
Yeah, something happened, and it was hilarious. And then I passed out.
And then I remember Julia, because and then much later, someone tweeted about it, and Julia, and it sort of the photo and everything went viral, and then Julia
said what episode? I read that.
Said,
what episode
all the best.
was it?
And was saying, I hope you're well and all that sort of thing. It was very nice.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
What a story. It was a very funny show. Very witty.
Yeah.
If you haven't seen it.
It was the most like politics.
Yeah.
I mean, politics isn't that funny, but it's in terms of people being, arseholes.
Oh, God, it's so funny. And there's an Australian show on, is it ABC, that's really funny too. Oh, and it's like a TransLink kind of company, and they're always starting projects but never finishing them, and they're always advertising them.
What's it called? Yeah, I know the one you mean. Yeah.
Brilliant show.
Yeah, I know the one you mean.
And that makes me feel like I'm back at work.
What is that one?
Yeah,
it'll come.
Anyway, great show.
Yeah.
Very funny. Very quietly funny.
Yeah.
Subtle.
Yeah.
But VEEP, not subtle.
No. But
really good.
Clever in its own way.
Yeah. Did you watch the entirety?
Yeah.
I could watch that again, actually.
Yeah.
Now, and you've also written books. So you've written the one you spoke about, but you've also written 2 other books. Tell me about your books.
3 other books.
3 other
so
books.
A trilogy. The 12th Fish, Big Fig, Solid Rock. So a animal, vegetable, mineral trilogy, which is sort of a fiction one. From Boolarong Press, if people want to track it down. And the long story is from Boolarong Press as well, but it's non-fiction. So.
Yeah. And so what got you into writing? What was it back in your teaching days you enjoyed writing?
I always loved the writing.
Yeah.
I was an English teacher, got an honours degree in literature. I love words and books.
Yeah.
I'm in a book club. I've always been in a book club. Yeah. I love doing that sort of stuff. So.
Yeah, I wrote 4 children's books, and I started a writing group. I started the Springfield Writing Group.
Get out of it.
No, I won't get out of it. So, but my books are educational books. So one was on IVF for young children. One was a sex ed book for young children.
Oh, right.
The next one was commissioned by Paul Pasali from Ipswich City Council, and it was a book called Ipswich Let's Play.
Yeah.
So it was given to all the babies born in the city, and it was all the places to play, all the free places to play in the museum.
Fantastic.
And the train thing. And
it was
fantastic.
The train thing. Thomas the Tank Engine.
Yeah. I'll give you a book before you leave today. And then the 4th one that I did was a very special one to me, and it's On the Wings of a Butterfly, and it's a children's book on grief and loss.
Okay.
Yeah. So,
wow.
we both have that in common. You've got 4, I've got 4.
Yeah.
High five to us.
Well, it takes a lot of courage to write. Yeah.
Yeah.
Especially that last one sounds,
Yeah. No, that was beautiful, that one. I lost my father when I was young, and I wrote that book writing the things that I wish were said to me, the things
Yeah,
that
yeah.
I think might have made me kind of deal with my loss better.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for
No,
your chat
thank
today.
you.
That was absolutely
That was
brilliant.
fantastic.
Yeah, I think we covered quite a few topics here.
God, we've been here a while, haven't we? Yeah. No, I
Thanks,
appreciate it,
Graham.
Belinda. Thanks for the work that you do.